The night belonged to Okonkwo. For 600 years, he had ruled the shadows, and tonight, a clan of younger vampires dared to challenge him. They called themselves the Blood Seekers, foolish creatures who believed age made him weak. Okonkwo stood in the clearing, surrounded by ancient trees that remembered when he was still human. The rebels echoed him, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. Their leader, a vampire barely 2 centuries old, hissed threats. Okonkwo didn't speak. He simply raised his hand, and the shadows obeyed. They rose from the ground like living smoke, wrapping around the rebels, crushing bone and draining life. Within minutes, the forest floor was littered with ash. The oldest trees whispered his name in fear. Animals fled deeper into the bush. Even the moon seemed to hide behind clouds. Okonkwo walked away without looking back, his black robes dragging across the blood-soaked earth. He was the Night King, the first vampire of Africa, and he had never known defeat. But as he moved through the forest, something strange happened. A scent caught his attention, sweet and ancient, calling to him from the village beyond the trees. For the first time in centuries, Okonkwo felt his knees weaken. Okonkwo stopped walking. His hand gripped a tree trunk as dizziness washed over him like river water. This had never happened before. Not in battle, not in sunlight, not even when he first became what he was. The scent grew stronger, pulling at something deep inside his chest. It smelled like honey mixed with earth, like the flowers his mother used to wear before the curse took him. He tried to move forward, but his legs betrayed him. Sweat formed on his forehead, impossible for a creature who hadn't sweated in 600 years. His council of vampire elders would laugh if they saw him now, the mighty Night King struggling to stand because of a smell. But this wasn't just any scent. It carried power, old power, the kind that existed before vampires walked the earth. Okonkwo's eyes turned from red to black as he searched the darkness. Somewhere in that village lived someone whose blood could either destroy him or make him a god. He didn't know which, and that terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced. With trembling hands, he steadied himself and began walking toward the village. Whatever waited for him there, he would face it. But deep in his ancient heart, Okonkwo knew his reign was about to change forever. Oge knelt by the river, washing clothes as the moon painted silver patterns on the water. She was 17, beautiful in a quiet way that made elders stop and stare. Her mother always said she had her grandmother's eyes, the ones that saw things others missed. Tonight, those eyes noticed something strange. The forest had gone completely silent. No crickets sang, no birds called, even the frogs had stopped their chorus. Oge looked up, her hand still in the water, and felt a coldness spread across her skin. Someone was watching her. She turned slowly, scanning the tree line, but saw nothing except shadows dancing between the trunks. Yet the feeling remained, heavy and certain. As she bent to gather her clothes, pain shot through her arms. She gasped and dropped the basket. Strange marks appeared on her skin, glowing faintly like dying embers. They formed patterns she had never seen before, symbols that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. Oge stumbled backward, falling into the shallow water. The marks burned brighter, and suddenly, the forest erupted with light. Invisible barriers rose around her, ancient and protective. From the darkness, she heard a man's voice, deep and filled with something that sounded like fear. The Night King had found her, and neither of them understood what it meant. In a cave deep beneath the oldest mountain, the vampire council gathered in emergency. 12 elders sat in a circle, their combined ages spanning 4,000 years. They had felt it, the awakening of the sacred bloodline they thought had died 3 centuries ago. Adana, the oldest among them, slammed her staff against the stone floor. Her voice cracked with urgency as she spoke. The girl has awakened. The symbols have appeared. Our time is ending. The others shifted nervously. They remembered the prophecy, the one written in blood on the walls of their first temple. It spoke of a human whose veins carried the power to end the night, whose blood would burn vampires from the inside, whose very existence threatened everything they had built. Udo, a scarred warrior vampire, stood up angrily. We survived the witch hunts. We survived the spirit wars. We will survive one village girl. But Adana shook her head. Okonkwo has already found her. I felt his presence near the river. He is changing. The council fell silent. If their king, the strongest among them, was being affected, then the prophecy was more powerful than they feared. We must kill her before the blood moon, Adana declared. Before she understands what she is. Before Okonkwo's weakness becomes our destruction. The vote was unanimous, and shadow hunters were dispatched into the night. The attack came 3 nights later, just after midnight. Oge was sleeping when her grandmother's voice filled her dreams, urgent and commanding. "Wake up, child. They are coming." She opened her eyes to see her hut surrounded by creatures made of living shadow. They had no faces, just dark forms with glowing red eyes and claws that dripped black liquid. The village dogs had gone mad, barking and whimpering. People rushed from their homes with machetes and torches, but the shadows moved through them like smoke through fingers. Oge's father swung his machete, and it passed harmlessly through a creature's chest. The shadow laughed and reached for him. That was when Oge screamed. Not from fear, but from something deeper, something that had been sleeping in her blood for generations. The marks on her arms blazed to life, and light exploded from her body like thunder. The shadows shrieked as they burned, not with fire, but with something older and more terrible. Ancestral spirits rose from the ground, warriors from centuries past, protecting their descendant with spears made of pure light. Within minutes, every shadow creature had been reduced to ash. The village stood in shocked silence, staring at Oge, who collapsed unconscious in her father's arms, her skin still glowing faintly. The Night King watched from the forest edge, and for the first time, he smiled. Oge woke 3 days later in the shrine of Ezenwan, the ancient priestess who lived at the edge of the village. Ezenwan was older than anyone could remember, her face carved with wrinkles that held 1,000 stories. She sat beside Oge, grinding herbs with steady hands. "You are awake, daughter of the sacred blood." Oge tried to sit up, but weakness pinned her down. "What happened to me? What are these marks?" Ezenwan sighed deeply. "Your grandmother should have told you before she died, but fear kept her silent. You are the last of the bloodline of light, created by the first ancestors to fight the creatures of eternal night." Oge's eyes widened. "Vampires. Those things in stories." "Not stories," Ezenwan corrected. "Truth. 600 years ago, a man named Okonkwo made a deal with a dark spirit to save his dying village. He became the first vampire, and many followed. But the ancestors saw the danger and created a counter-curse. They chose one family, blessed their blood with power that burns the undead from within. Your grandmother was supposed to have the gift, but it skipped her. It came to you instead." Oge felt tears burning her eyes. "Why me? I'm just a girl." Ezenwan touched her hand gently. "The night has a king. The light needs a queen. You are the weapon the ancestors made, and the vampires will do anything to destroy you before you fully awaken." Okonkwo appeared in the village market 3 days later, disguised as a traveling merchant from the north. He wore simple clothes and smiled easily, his immortal beauty hidden beneath a charm that made him look ordinary. He needed to understand this girl, to be close to her without the barrier of fear. Oge was buying yams when she felt that familiar coldness again. She turned and saw a tall, handsome stranger watching her with eyes that seemed older than his face. Their gazes locked, and something passed between them, recognition without understanding. "Forgive me for staring," Okonkwo said smoothly, approaching with a merchant's confidence. "You remind me of someone I once knew." Oge clutched her basket tighter, the marks on her arms tingling beneath her wrapper. "I don't think we've met." "Perhaps in another life," he replied, his smile never reaching his eyes. They talked for hours that day, about nothing and everything. He told her stories of distant kingdoms and strange lands. She told him about her dreams of seeing the ocean. Neither revealed their truth, but both felt the dangerous pull between them. When Okonkwo finally left, his hands were shaking. Her presence had weakened him again, but this time, he didn't want to leave. And Oge, walking home under the setting sun, couldn't understand why her heart raced when she thought of the stranger's smile. Ezenwan couldn't sleep. For weeks, she had been studying the ancient scrolls hidden in her shrine, and what she discovered made her blood run cold. The prophecy everyone knew, the one about the sacred bloodline destroying the vampires, was incomplete. Someone had torn away the final section and burned it. She searched through older texts, fragments rescued from burnt temples and forgotten caves. Finally, in a scroll written in her own grandmother's hand, she found the missing words. Her hands trembled as she read by candlelight. The prophecy didn't say the sacred blood would destroy the vampires. It said the sacred blood would join with the Night King, creating a new power that would either save the world or consume it entirely. The choice belonged to the girl, but the bond was inevitable. "They lied to us," Izenwan whispered into the darkness. "The elders changed the words to make us kill her before the bond could form." She understood now why the Vampire Council was so desperate, why Okonkwo was drawn to Oge despite the pain it caused him. They were two halves of an ancient curse, meant to come together. But if they did, the consequences would reshape the spirit world forever. Izenwan grabbed her staff and hurried into the night. She had to warn Oge before it was too late, before the girl's heart betrayed her destiny. The Vampire Council met in darkness, but this time, Okonkwo was not invited. Adana stood at the center, her voice filled with contempt. "Our king has grown weak. He visits the girl in daylight. He smiles like a human. He has forgotten what he is." Udo growled in agreement. "I watched him yesterday. He bought her flowers from the market." Flowers. The Night King who once bathed in the blood of armies now picks wildflowers for a village girl. The other elders murmured angrily. Adana raised her hand for silence. "Okonkwo is no longer fit to rule. The sacred blood has poisoned his mind. He will betray us to protect her." "What do you propose?" asked Nkem, a vampire known for his cruelty. Adana smiled coldly. "We kill them both. The girl first, to break his spirit. Then we challenge him when he is weakest. A new king will rise, one who remembers that we are predators, not lovers." The vote was quick and unanimous. But what they didn't know was that Okonkwo stood just outside the cave, hidden in shadows even older than themselves. He had heard everything. His eyes turned blood red, and the ancient rage that had slept for centuries awakened. They wanted war. He would give them a war that would be remembered until the end of time. But first, he had to protect Oge, even if it meant destroying everything he had built. The blood moon rose red and full, painting the sky the color of fresh wounds. That was when the war began. Vampire clans poured from the mountains and forests, their eyes glowing with hunger and hate. They descended on Oge's village with claws and fangs, killing anyone who stood in their way. But they had underestimated the ancestors. Ancient spirits rose from burial grounds, warriors who had died protecting their people centuries ago. They fought with spears of light and shields of pure faith. The forest became a battlefield where the living, the dead, and the undead clashed in terrible fury. Izenwan stood at the center of the village, her staff planted in the earth, calling on powers that made the ground shake. Witches allied with the vampires threw curses that turned the sky black, but ancestral magic pushed back, creating walls of fire that burned cold instead of hot. Oge stood frozen, watching the chaos unfold. The marks on her skin blazed brighter than ever, responding to the violence around her. She could feel every death, every scream, every drop of blood that soaked into the earth. Okonkwo appeared beside her, his true form revealed at last, eyes burning red, fangs extended. "Stay close to me," he commanded. "I won't let them touch you." And despite everything, despite knowing what he was, Oge believed him. The battle raged for hours, and the vampire elders finally revealed themselves. Adana led the charge, her ancient power crushing spirits like dry leaves. She moved through the fighting, heading straight for Oge. "There she is," Adana shrieked. "Kill the girl, and this ends." Okonkwo stepped between them, his voice shaking the earth. "You will not touch her." Adana laughed bitterly. "You chose a human over your own kind. You are weak, Okonkwo. Weak and pathetic." They clashed with force that split trees and cracked the ground. But Adana wasn't alone. Udo and Kem attacked from the sides, 3 vampire elders against 1 king. Okonkwo fought with the rage of 6 centuries, but even he couldn't stand against all of them. Oge watched in horror as they drove him to his knees. She tried to run to him, but Adana was faster. The elder vampire appeared in front of her, grabbed her by the throat, and lifted her off the ground. "This is for our survival," Adana hissed, and drove her claws through Oge's chest. Time seemed to stop. Oge's blood spilled onto the earth, and the ancestral marks on her skin flickered and died. She fell like a broken doll, her eyes staring at nothing. Okonkwo's scream shattered the night. He threw off his attackers and crawled to Oge's body, cradling her against his chest. She was dying, her heartbeat fading like distant drums. Okonkwo held Oge's dying body, and for the first time in 600 years, tears fell from his eyes. The battle around them seemed to fade, becoming distant noise. Her blood soaked his hands, warm and precious. The ancient law was clear: if a vampire drank from the sacred bloodline, both would die instantly, destroyed by powers older than creation. But Okonkwo didn't care anymore. Without her, immortality meant nothing. The council elders circled him, watching with cruel satisfaction. "Let her die," Adana commanded. "And accept your fate." Okonkwo looked down at Oge's pale face, at the girl who had made him remember what it felt like to be human. He bent his head and whispered against her ear, "Forgive me." Then he bit into her neck and drank. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Light exploded from Oge's body, so bright that vampires across the battlefield screamed and shielded their eyes. Okonkwo's own body convulsed as her blood entered his system, burning like liquid fire. The sacred marks that had faded from her skin now appeared on his, spreading across his chest and arms. The ground beneath them cracked open, releasing energy that had been sealed for centuries. Izenwan, watching from the shrine, fell to her knees. He did it. He broke the final seal. The sky turned from red to gold, and Oge's eyes opened, but they no longer looked human. Oge rose from Okonkwo's arms, but she was no longer the village girl who washed clothes by the river. Her body radiated power that made the earth tremble and the sky weep. The wound in her chest had healed, sealed by vampire blood mixed with ancestral magic. Her eyes glowed with silver light, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of 1,000 generations. "I understand now," she whispered, looking at her hands as darkness and light swirled around her fingers. The prophecy was never about destruction. It was about transformation. The vampire elder stepped back in fear. Adana's voice shook. "What have you become?" Oge turned to face them, and they saw their doom in her eyes. "I am what happens when night and day become one. I am the bridge between the living and the undead. I am the end of your reign." She raised her hand, and every vampire on the battlefield fell to their knees, unable to resist her command. The ancestral spirits bowed as well, recognizing a power greater than themselves. Izenwan approached slowly, her ancient face filled with wonder and terror. The prophecy spoke of a choice. "You can rule both worlds now, command the night and the day. Or you can end the curse entirely and free us all." Oge looked at Okonkwo, who was changing too, the marks spreading across his skin. "What have we created?" she asked. He could only shake his head, speechless for the first time in centuries. Okonkwo felt his immortality draining away like water through broken clay. The marks on his skin burned as Oge's blood walked through his system, unmaking everything the dark spirit had created 600 years ago. He aged visibly, lines appearing on his face, his hair turning gray at the temples. The vampire elder sensed his weakness and tried to attack, but Oge destroyed them with a thought. Adana, Udo, Nkem, and the others simply turned to dust, their ancient bodies unable to withstand her power. Across the land, vampires began to fall. Those who had lived for centuries crumbled into nothing. Those who were younger found themselves becoming human again, mortal and confused. The age of the undead was ending, dissolved by the blood of a girl who had become something neither human nor vampire. Okonkwo collapsed, his strength gone, his power scattered like smoke. Oge knelt beside him, catching him as he fell. "I'm dying," he said simply, no fear in his voice, only acceptance. "No," Oge replied, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. You're becoming what you were meant to be. Human. Mortal. Free. He touched her face gently. And you? What will you become? She looked up at the blood moon, now fading back to silver. The spirits around them waited for her decision. She held the power to rule the night, to become an immortal queen greater than any vampire king. Or she could end it all, break the curse completely, and return the world to balance. Oge stood in the center of the battlefield, power coursing through her veins like lightning through storm clouds. She could feel every vampire left in the world, every spirit waiting in the shadows, every human praying for dawn. The choice was hers alone. Rule or sacrifice. Reign or release. Izenwan stepped forward, leaning on her staff. The ancestors did not create your bloodline to make you a queen, child. They created it to give the world a choice when the time came. You are the key that can lock the darkness away forever. Oge looked at Okonkwo, now fully human, gray-haired and mortal, barely able to stand. He had given up everything for her. How could she do less? She closed her eyes and made her decision. The power inside her began to change, no longer pulling inward but pushing outward, spreading across the land like dawn breaking over mountains. Every remaining vampire felt it, the curse lifting, mortality returning. The shadow creatures dissolved. The dark spirits fled back to their realm. The blood moon turned silver, then disappeared behind clouds. Oge's body began to fade, turning translucent as she poured her life force into breaking the curse completely. Okonkwo tried to reach for her, but his human hands passed through her form. No, he cried. Not like this. She smiled at him, peaceful and certain. You will live, Okonkwo. You will grow old and die as humans should. Remember me. Remember that love is stronger than any curse. Then she was gone, scattered into light that healed the land and freed the world from 600 years of darkness. Okonkwo fell to his knees, fully human, fully mortal, and wept for the girl who had saved them all. If you're watching this video, please subscribe to the channel for more folktale stories.